Heather?
Hey, how are
Hey,
you?
great, great. Yeah, I didn't expect you to call right before 6. You actually interrupted a session I was doing with Archangel Gabriel, but that's okay. I will happily
Sorry.
do that afterwards. That's because we got the show to get to now. So I see you have the camera on. You can actually turn that off. This is audio only, and it may actually be
Okay.
better to turn it off. So to make
Okay.
sure that the best reception comes in, I want
Perfect.
to make sure the Skype recorder is going, and so you had the extraordinary privilege of having your program uploaded to, I believe it was the Awakening Our Truth channel. If it's definitely a privilege to have that one of your videos from your channels uploaded to that channel.
Yeah,
That you
absolutely.
obviously very important information you must be giving if that's put there. So that's how I heard about you, and I definitely, after seeing all the videos you have on your channel, which I will be using as a guide throughout
Okay.
this program, I have it listed here, the most popular videos down to the least popular.
Okay.
And so probably most important subjects are worth talking
Mhm.
about first as well. I do have your
Sure.
More Than Love website up here as well, but it probably makes sense to go by the YouTube channel titles as far as subjects go. I will, however, ask at the beginning of this program. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to do a 5, 4, 3, 2 countdown. That'll
Okay.
be the official start of the show after I get down to 1, and then I'll say your name, and then say welcome to the program, and then I'll ask you to give your life story from a primary source perspective regarding who you are and what you experience that causes you to do the stuff that you do. Best to set the tone for that, as well as any other guest that doesn't may not have a household name. Although I'm sure you're going to have a household name in the spiritual community soon if they keep uploading your videos to the Awaken Our Truth YouTube channel. So best of luck to you with that, and I will stop babbling and do the countdown. And
No problem. Awesome. Yeah, I just want to make sure real quick. You can hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Let
Okay.
me turn up the volume maybe a little bit on my end to make sure everything's good. The recorder is going, and I'm going to make note of this at the end of the program for the listeners. But in addition to YouTube, I unfortunately cannot monetize on YouTube anymore. They have taken that off from me, and
Hmm.
ever since Independence Day when I reapplied, they have yet to reapply me, so I get a feeling that they're not going to. So all my programs are also being uploaded to Cost.tv, which is a blockchain
Oh, okay.
cryptocurrency channel. Very minimal payments made through that, though, anyway, but it's better than
Mhm.
nothing. So, and I
Yeah. Good.
only can do hour increments on that. This is going to be, if you want to go a full 2 hours. If you don't want to go full 2 hours, just let me know and I can cut it short, but we can go 2 hours max. I'm sure we can definitely come up with many subjects worth talking about that in that time. But when I upload it to Cost.tv, I'll have to chop it down into 1 hour increments because that's the max, and I'll make a
Got
note
it.
of that at the end. So
Okay.
without further ado, here's the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Heather D. Richmond from More Than Love, BeMoreThanLove.com is your site. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. I heard about you after I listened to one of your videos on the Awakening Our Truth YouTube channel. It is definitely an honor, as I said during our pre-show conversation, to have one of your videos uploaded to that channel. If they upload your video to that channel, that's a sign that your information is very important and you are definitely worthy of being a guest on my show to expose the nature of reality for what it is and what it is not. I definitely felt that after listening to your video, and I certainly feel that after looking at all the work that you do regarding the videos that have been uploaded through the past and the things on your site. But of course, for those that haven't heard about you, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you experience that causes you to do the stuff that you do, and then we will go from there. I will shut up and put myself on mute. You've got the floor, and I will not interrupt you.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Okay, no problem. Thank you for your kind words. I really do appreciate that. Yeah, Awakening Our Truth has been truly a blessing for me to, be able to work with those guys and upload my videos to their channel. So I'm very grateful for that. Yeah, so I am a certified quantum healing hypnosis technique practitioner. I've been doing that for about a year. My company is called, as you mentioned, More Than Love. I'm located in Houston. You asked, what my story is that has led me to do what I'm doing. That would be a 2-hour conversation in and of itself. So I'll just very briefly just summarize that, I guess, basically. So I was an educator for 11 years. I taught middle school, high school, and college. Taught English, and I lived in a very small rural town in East Texas. And back in 2017, I guess, I started doing a lot of what I now know to be automatic writing about various subjects. And then from there, it just sort of progressed. I was never, spiritual prior to that, but I literally did not even know the term spiritual awakening until about a year ago. So I just felt the call, and I was led very directly to move from my small little town, change up my entire existence, and move to the big city here in Houston. And from there, I started, just voraciously, learning all that I could about a variety of topics, and that still continues today. And like I said, my primary work is as a hypnosis practitioner. In addition to QHHT, I have another modality as well. And also, I just do a lot of research and try to pass along any information that I, come upon etherically or, via the traditional routes. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yes, thank you. So I guess the most popular video on your channel is the one that I might as well talk about now. And well, I see you said the dreaded CV word. I don't know if you said in the video. I presume you did. You certainly have it in the title. And interesting story how like I did a video with David Morgan, the Silver Guru, and I made the mistake of using that word. And the video was allowed to be uploaded, and I was like to be monetized too, and I was like, are you guys playing me for a sap? I can't believe you did this to me. Well, apparently they were, because the next thing I know, my channel got demonetized the very next day, so I think they were trying to sucker me. But this video, Message from Atlantis, it was done 6 months ago, right at the start it would have been of the CV thing. At that time, I don't think it was spread around the world to the extent that it was that it is now. So I guess I might as well ask you, was this really some sort of a message from Atlantis that that you somehow downloaded or something? And it's also about, it says Schumann resonance and free. I can't see that second word there. Energy maybe because it's
Yes.
blocked by the time things. Oh, yes, okay. So yeah, that's what it is, and free energy. So maybe you can get into what was discussed in that 25-minute video, give maybe an abridged version of that, and now that we're in the present day now of about a half a year after that video would have been uploaded, and this has taken on a whole new toll on the earth, and apparently it's not what we're led to believe it is. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes. What do you have to say about this?
Sure. So, like you said, that video is from quite some time ago, and so much, so much evolution has happened. I don't even know that I could directly speak to that specific video, but I can definitely talk on the topic, and the topics I touched on in there, and give more of a greater perspective that I have now. So, yeah, essentially, I'd mentioned a moment ago that I did a lot of automatic writing, and early on, I wrote a couple of novel manuscripts that will probably never be finished. But one of those, and this was back in 2017 for grad school. One of those manuscripts was actually about a pandemic that circulated around the world via it was started by a group of terrorists, and then it resulted in essentially people, the earth was ravaged, and everyone had to, they either died or certain people were able to travel to the moon and colonize that. I had no idea what I was writing at the time. I just liked dystopian text, and so that's, obviously now it takes on new meaning. Um, so yeah, I think that I don't know how deep you want me to go into this, but I think basically what we are seeing with the virus, um, it's very, I don't spend much time talking about, who did what. I'm aware of all of that, like who is responsible for it, and what the goal is and all of that. But I try to take a more of a oneness perspective. And basically, my view on it is that it's the collapsing of the third dimensional Earth plane timeline that we're seeing. And it could be the coronavirus, or it could be, I hope I didn't get you in trouble for saying that. It could be the virus. It could be, anything. That's just a symbolic event that is representative of the collapsing of that timeline, and the evolution into something else. And so we can see just a ton of metaphor in this. We see the mask, and that's of course representative of everybody's suppressed speech, and wearing the mask is like the ego. It's just in our face, and the social distancing, that has obvious, it's the proliferation of separation, essentially. So basically, from my perspective, what we're seeing with that is, it's simply a quote unquote physical manifestation of what, we on the, when we were existing on the 3D earth plane, of what we built. And it just like we see microcosmically within ourselves, these energies just had to come up so that we can see them in a very tangible, physical way. And then we can transcend past that, or we can, of course, many people are choosing not to. So for me personally, I don't see, there's not one single thing to worry about. If you're on the 5D ascension path, or whatever, however you want to label it, you don't need to be worried about the virus.
Yes, and I choose not to worry about it too. Definitely don't want to instill fear in myself or anyone else
Mm-hmm.
because of it. Now, about the what's going on behind the scenes as a result of this, there's a lot of controversy regarding, well, what is and what isn't, but also how we, those that are in the know about this, should be trying to enlighten and educate those who aren't in the know about this. I mean, one of the more common things that is agree to disagree on regarding whether it is real or not real, or if it is real, what's the best way to talk about it, is the idea that this is all signifying the end of the system of domination control on the earth, and the banking cartel is no longer going to be controlling us. And when this is over, won't have to worry about them loaning us money that doesn't exist and charging us interest on, and no more corruption on Wall Street, and among other things, free energy can be released and such, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody won't have to work 9 to 5 anymore, because everything will be provided for by the technology that those that want us to work 9 to 5 to enslave us are keeping suppressed by using the petroleum-based economies and everything else that goes with it that shouldn't be the economy that we're using if we knew what was actually available
Sure.
to us. And with that being said, I've heard a lot of controversy regarding when the timeline may be and when this is going to happen. There's a guy, Bo Polney, who recently did another fascinating interview on the USA Watchdog radio show about the timeline regarding the change of America from, he says that something big is going to happen around the fall equinox going into April of 2021. And then he was talking about 2024 being a very, very significant year regarding America being, well, I can imagine being a collapse of some sort, considering that they say America is the Roman Empire of the modern era. That's going to end around the solar eclipse of April 8th, 2024, which crisscrosses America. And the crisscross point is Carbondale, Illinois. That's the crisscross point of that eclipse, and the one that happened in 2017.
Right.
It's interesting how the American Revolution was preceded and ended, I believe, by an eclipse and another eclipse that crisscrossed America in similar fashions. So you have to think that all this stuff we're seeing around America regarding the society falling apart and the rioting in the streets and everything, that's basically a civil war and or American Revolution, is a sign of what's going to happen in 2024. Interesting how that eclipse that year coincides with the end of the Pluto and Capricorn cycle, which is supposed to signify the end of everything, the destruction of everything that's not in humanity's best interest. Last time that happened was the American Revolution. How fitting. So, regarding how we need to get word about this out, I've heard some people like David Icke and Andrew Bartzis try to downplay the idea of a Nasara Jasara global currency reset RV kind of thing, and it seems like they know that it's real, they think it's real, but they don't want to push the idea that it's real because they have a feeling that if they were to do that, then a lot of Americans and other people around the world, for that matter, are going to get lazy and apathetic and act like couch potatoes and think, oh, I don't have to do anything because they're just going to come and save me, all the white horses and all with the economic reset and all the release of technology. And of course, anybody who understands the law of attraction knows that the more people on planet Earth who actually do their part to try to manifest it will allow for the ascension and the release of technologies and everything that will allow for ascension, whenever it may be, to happen sooner than later. So, I mean, do they have to actually flat out lie and say it's a psyop? Don't worry about Nasara. Don't even worry about Q, because that's probably, David Icke says, that's probably a psyop too. They just want you to listen to that and so you don't have to worry about anything else. But it's probably not. It's probably there. I'm sure there's definitely good forces behind that. But the problem is, some people assert if you talk about it, you're going to make people lazy. So, do you agree or disagree with that? And do you think if there is a way to talk about it without making people be apathetic? And if there is, well, what's the best way to get that information out?
Okay, so I take a bit of a different standpoint, and this won't resonate with everyone, and that's perfectly fine. I'm never trying to convince anyone of anything. I'm just passing along my perspective. For me, ascension is an individual process. We exist in a quantum field, and it's what we perceive is dependent upon what we specifically tune into, which timeline, which frequency we tune into. So I would posit, and I do posit that, ascension, when we talk about a timeline into 5D, it's whenever it happens whenever you are ready. Whenever the individual at a soul level is ready to have that experience. And there are, not that you have to transcend the physical in total, but I think that there are a lot of things that we're required to transcend and work toward transcending in order to progress or, ascend our consciousness into 5D. From my perspective, 5D, the higher planes of existence, that is readily available to anyone it's always been there. 5D has always been there. We have created this 3D matrix game. We ourselves created it. We entered that field for a period of time. We got amnesia. And then, most people are just sort of now like rubbing their eyes and waking up and they're like, whoa, wait a minute, something's not right here in this game. And so now, they're making their way over into 5D. But again, the less attention that one pays to 3D, that if I could give any one piece of advice, I would say this: the less attention that you pay to 3D, the more and more, the further it gets from your consciousness, the more and more the higher planes of existence are available to you. And I totally understand that many, many, many people are still stuck working 9 to 5 jobs because they have to. And I will say this: when it is at a soul level the right time for you to, when you need that time to ascend your consciousness, you will 100% be guided in that direction. You'll no longer have to work 9 to 5 if you don't want to. Through various synchronicities, it will work out for you so that you do not have to worry about money. Like, I'm not suggesting in any way that, you're going to get $1 million dropped onto your lap or whatever. But when you've, gone through these processes of transcending above duality, then you understand the importance of only taking what you need and all of that. So all that to say is that everything is happening in divine timing for every individual. So like, let's say, for instance, right now I'm existing in 5D. Maybe my neighbor next door is existing in 3D. In theory, if we talk about quantum law, in theory, 3D cannot perceive the higher planes, but 5D can perceive the lower planes. So once your consciousness is primarily in the higher planes, you become the observer of 3D, and it's no longer a concern for you. You're just watching it play out.
Well, that is the case, and but someone like I who has this radio show, I could, in theory, stop uploading this radio show for free on YouTube and force people to pay me by putting it only on Patreon. And I've actually been advised by like Andrew Bartis in the session I had with him back in 2017 that I should actually consider doing that to not be dependent on the 9 to 5 system anymore. Currently, I'm working as a clerk in my mother's ophthalmology office, and I do love the job so much because my mother means so much to me. Even if I won $1 million in the lottery, I'd want to keep working for her because she's means a lot to me to that extent. And well, but the idea that I could actually quit that job and be sure that I could make enough money from donations that people give me for wanting to listen to my program seems easier said than done. And Andrew Bart says, you got to understand, with all due respect to him, he has the luxury of accessing the Akashic records, so he can charge someone a week's paycheck to have an hour session to be able to answer unverifiable questions about their life. So kind of easier for him to make money than me. And no offense, but was he taking that into an account when he thought that I should consider looking into marketing to market my radio show to quit the job and be more free and all? Well, I don't know, but the issue is, what can I, as an individual, even if I were to somehow find a way to do that where I could actually quit my day job because I could find a way to get people to give me enough money to want to listen to my show through that, and also through the blockchain on uploading to cost.tv, that going to, because Brad Johnson, who channels Ladronis, he said you have to understand that one person cannot change the world. It's not like that. It can't be done. It's you're just one smaller Mandelbrot set within the greater Mandelbrot set, and the Earth, well, it's also a smaller Mandelbrot set within the greater Mandelbrot set, but of course the representation of Earth Mandelbrot set is much, much bigger than the humans is. So any change that that a human makes is going to be much smaller to the greater amount of offset than any Earth change would. So me quitting my 9 to 5 day job to make money is not gonna like make it easier for everybody else around the world to be able to make money, and it's not gonna get the homeless people off the streets, and so they don't have to suffer anymore. So if you get my drift here, what exactly can the individual do to speed up the process if they can't
Mhm.
change the world? Any advice on what they can
Yeah.
do to make it exponential rather than just a small little drop in the bucket to try to change things?
Yeah, I can absolutely speak to that. And I will preface this by saying, um, I totally understand what you mean when you talk about, the guy who charges everybody, a week's paycheck or whatever, um, all of that. I trust me. I had a career where I was very successful. I didn't make a ton of money, but of course I was comfortable. Everything was fine. Um, when it is the right time, your soul knows what it's doing. You may not know on a conscious level, but your soul knows exactly what's happening. You or whomever will be taken out of that job if it's not serving your highest good. Various synchronicities will happen to lead you away to something else. And it requires you getting your ego self out of the way, and that will happen automatically. But it involves a tremendous amount of trust. I'm to be very candid right now. I have like single digits in my bank account. I am tr- I am trusting, and I haven't had a formal quote unquote job in a year, and through various things, um, I have been 100. I've never gone without anything that I needed. I've been provided with just enough, to get what I need, and it's not. And so after so long of that happening, you just learn to trust. And in terms of whether to market or not market or money, have money, whatever, I am a very firm believer in a system called energy philanthropy. Not many people know about it yet, but if you look up Marina Jacoby, she has a series on YouTube of videos that have just truly transformed my existence. And I know it would to anyone who can resonate to that frequency. So basically, energy philanthropy says, say I have a QHHT client, and this is what I do. Say I have a hypnosis client, they email me and they want a session, whatever. Well, they're going to ask me like, how much do you charge? On my website, I have officially, just because I haven't updated it, I have $333 for a session. I think maybe one person has actually paid that amount. Because I work on basically, it's a donation based system. The donation in and of itself does not have to be money. I've had sessions where I will exchange, I'll give them a session and they can help me with my social media or whatever the case may be. I don't really do social media, but um, just something that I can't do. We can trade services. Um, I know it sounds crazy when, like, I've got all these bills piling up, or whomever has all these bills piling up, but like, to say I'm not going to charge money for this service, but I believe and I know in my heart because I've seen it that when you give freely from the heart, it will come back to you. Um, and so if you and it can't be like, oh, I'm going to give you the session, you give me what you think, but then in the back of your mind you got like a number. It can't be like that. You truly just have to say, like, even if this person does not give me anything, I'm willing to give them something from my heart because I want to help in some way. And so your question about changing the world, exponentially, I believe that's a large way that we do it. Just to give a very brief, like specific example of how that's manifested in my life, and I have many, but I had a woman email me yesterday, and I sent her an email. She was asking, about pricing and all of that, and I picked up that she was concerned, that might be a hindrance to her. So I explained my system to her. She emails back, and she's, very excited and, wants to schedule a session. But I don't know that she'll be able to. I have no idea if she's going to give me anything. I don't know, because I explained all that to her. Well, I'm in a position right now where, like, literally, this is very banal, but it's just maybe will help illustrate it. Like, I need my yard mowed right now. I don't have the money to get that done. However, I sent my guy who does it, I sent him a message and I said, look, I don't have the money right now. Can we do it next week? He calls me back like immediately and he says, hey, we're not going to let money be and this guy, I've only known him like, just a few months, but he says, we're not going to let money be a hindrance, an obstacle. If you need your yard mowed, I'm coming tomorrow and we'll catch up later. We'll figure it out later. And I've had stuff like that happen time and time again. So I just, it may not come from that same person, your return or whatever, but it will come back to you. And I believe that that's the future of 5D. Like if we want money in 5D, if that's a thing we want, and obviously we have to transition into that. It can't be overnight, but it's not entirely necessary. That's not how I envision, and that's not how I'm living a 5D existence. It's based purely on money. I think we have to let that go because money has been such a huge tool for, enslavement or control, however you want to put that. So.
Well, yes, of course, all the other systems, according to Alex Collier, out there in the cosmos don't use money. They still engage in trade, but there is no money. And the fact that we still are the only one that use it kind of makes you wonder, okay, can you not, does not want to give you a kick in the pants of sorts to say, let's join the
Yeah.
club and get with the rest of the program and stop
Yeah.
using what is so obviously universally obsolete and galactically obsolete? Well, it's going to
Absolutely.
take a little time, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I've always said that if what Andromeda Council contactee Tolik says that his contacts have told him that there's a 10 to 15 year period where humanity transitions to no money at all. Well, what do we need to kickstart that 10 to 15 year period? Well, I think the global currency reset, if it's coming soon, as some of my sources that I've interviewed recently are saying it is, well, that I would have to presume would be the starting point, because the money that we use now has no intrinsic value, and that could potentially change.
Can I interject real quick on that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I totally, I truly do understand, like, the hope collectively that everybody has for this, global reset and all of these, things. I would not say this if I did not believe it and I did not know it in my heart. I truly believe that the quote unquote reset, it will happen whenever it's individual. It will happen whenever you, at a soul level, not your ego self, at a soul level, whenever that process is ready to happen, it will happen. You'll tune into that. So I still do get a little bit, like, not irritated, but just sort of like I cringe a little bit when I hear, various spiritual teachers say, okay, well, in 6 months, we're going to see this, or in a year, we're going to see this. That's just one potential timeline. That's one timeline that they themselves are tuned into, and that's what they're telling others. Nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But if you're sitting around, if anyone listening is like sitting around saying, okay, in 10 to 15 years or however long, I'm going to be, then that's when I'm going to be financially sovereign or whatever. You're not, you're kind of missing the point. Um, I know that sounds crazy. Trust me, I know. But it truly does unfold whenever it's time at a soul level. And it will have people ask me like advice about how do you do this or how do you do that. Um, it will happen automatically. You at a certain, you'll look for guidance in the beginning, of course, we all do, but then at a certain point, you don't have to look anywhere else for guidance, and you don't need to worry about what anybody else is saying. You just do your own thing, and whatever your soul guides you to do. So that's my take on that.
Yes, and I think I should point out, though, that in a couple of days we are actually going to be seeing a rather significant astrological occurrence with the planet Uranus going retrograde in Taurus until the end of the year, and I don't know how far into 2021 that's going to be. From my personal horoscope standpoint, that's in my second house, and it actually says outside circumstances will have a major bearing on my finances, and changes can be unexpected, so be cautious because changes could be good or bad. That's just me. Interesting how I say this, and today is the day that I actually liquidated or made a trade in my IRA to have 50% of my IRA converted to gold and
Mm-hmm,
silver rather than dollars,
mm-hmm,
because I think that's a sensible thing to do. And all the currency that the gold that I had originally was like back like wrapped in plastic and all that, which made it not worth as much as it was more expensive than it should have been. So I
mm-hmm,
did a trade of sorts for Canadian maple leaf coins, and how appropriate that that's happening right before this for me. So, but then again, that's my second house. Everybody else has a different thing. But this Uranus in going retrograde, it's supposed to be a pretty rocky thing. It says, according to Carrie Samuel's horoscope for 2020. She, which I have here in front of me, Cosmic Calendar, says that if you expect things to be predictable, you have to loosen your grip a little because they're not going to be for the rest of the year. And well, this is going to play out a little bit. And well, I'm not going to really get in my sources said because I don't want to take away from your time to talk about the things that you can talk about on this show. With that being said, let's switch gears here and talk about some of the things that you have on your site here. It says you have developed interests and you seek to further cultivate and share gifts in the areas of, how about this? Kundalini and divine masculine and divine feminine energies. Um, did you want to? Is there a reason why you put Kundalini with divine masculine and divine feminine, or could you maybe have made Kundalini a separate tab here, or is there a reason why you decided to put that with divine masculine and feminine? So answer that, and then what exactly is this all about? What can you offer us with wisdom on this subject?
Sure. Yeah. So I I guess if we look at like what Kundalini is, and as I mentioned, I had a very rapid awakening, very rapid. Like I really haven't heard anyone else's story who has been that drastic and quick. But essentially, if we think about the caduceus, the medical symbol that we see, and we look at that, symbolically, we look at, the spine is the rod, the middle part, and then wrapped around the spine, the rod, we have the two snakes. Well, that's, our masculine and feminine energies, and they are, we're continually seeking balance and eventual fusion of the two. So the Kundalini, uh, I'm still trying to get a grasp on what that is, like from a more quantum perspective. If we look at, because I subscribe to, essentially the holographic universe ideology. But, uh, when we as we exist on the 3D earth plane, at a certain point, again, whenever the soul is ready, we're activated, and that, energy, of course, rises up, and sort of, destroys our entire world for a little while. And that's what we're seeing right now. This just kind of came to me. That's really what we're seeing right now, in the world, is kind of this like Kundalini sort of energy coming up, because it brings out, it brings out the best and it brings out the worst in you. And we can see that reflected in humanity as well. We don't talk about it, but there's people who are, of course, pulling together and going inward, and just doing all this healing work. But then also, of course, we have the other side of it, which is, representative of like our journey to the underworld. And so we could say right now that that's what we're seeing in humanity. Humanity is making that journey to the underworld. And so as you have those experiences, like at a micro individual level, your Kundalini is activated. And that really just signifies like the beginning of your waking up process. And then, of course, like I said, I think that the whole like process of awakening really is to find that balance of our masculine and feminine, because we are all both of those things. And, eventually we will fuse together as one.
Thank you. Down the list here, shadow work guidance. Shadow. That's a word that some people see that and they think of it as being inauspicious, but it doesn't necessarily have to be an inauspicious word. Shadow does. Think of something like shadows being dark and all, but it doesn't have to be a dark, like as in dark side of the force kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It can just certainly be a beneficial thing, and I think it is in this sense when you're talking shadow work guidance. Who's exactly offering guidance, and what does shadow work encompass? Why don't you
Okay.
enlighten me on this?
Okay. Yeah. Good question. So, um, uh, essentially, and this has just been sort of a newer piece of information that has come to me, but essentially, when we exist on the 3D Earth plane, we are sending down from our higher self. We're sending down a shadow projection of ourselves. If you've gone through, when your consciousness exists in or higher, you will look back at your 3D existence, and it is typically, it really does feel like that. It feels like thinking about a shadow of yourself, because that's what it was. That's, that was the experience that we all agreed to have. So we think about, we could equate a shadow to kind of like an avatar, essentially. And so, we were, here, or on the 3D Earth plane, our shadows were, subject to seeing, to projecting our own shadows from that of others, and of experiences, of, places even. And so that's part of the reason when we talk about, the fact that we're only able to perceive like 0.1% or whatever the actual, the technical number is, of the electromagnetic spectrum. That's what we're talking about. On the 3D Earth plane, one is only able to have that very, very limited degree of perception. As you ascend in your consciousness, your sight quite literally opens up, in the the field, and you can perceive many things that you could not perceive before. So at that point, we can say that when our consciousness exists out of 3D in the higher planes, that we're no longer existing as a shadow of ourselves. We're returning to ourselves. And so basically the way that shadow work in, the more 3D sense, what I'm referencing there on my website, the way that that's manifested is, if people are really and truly, what in my experience, I've had people who, find me synchronistically, we're tuned into the same frequency, and they are just waking up. They're just starting to look around and think, wow, what's happening here? And they come to me, these people have found me synchronistically to help, alleviate, to sort of understand, make sense of these shadow projections that they've been seeing. And furthermore, to understand what it is, why they're able to see what they can now, that with their expanded vision, because of course it's very unsettling, at least in the beginning, and we don't understand what's happening. So that's a pretty different definition than most shadow work guides will give. Really, more traditionally, shadow work is about like looking at your childhood and finding anything that was suppressed. It's Jung, it's his term. So it's about finding things that were suppressed and bringing those up to the surface, which again, you can equate, everything is, we can compare it at a microcosmic level and a macrocosmic level. So we can see this happening in humanity right now. That's exactly what humanity is doing. They're just looking at their shadows, and the shadows are becoming more and more in their face, quite literally. And they cannot ignore it anymore. And so that's what happens with us individually, and that's what happens with humanity as a collective. And the goal is to just understand, oh, that was just my shadow, that wasn't me, myself, in my true form. So
Thank you very much. Now, you're very big on the QHHT, the quantum healing hypnosis technique method, and also past life regression BQH, beyond quantum healing. Or are they actually the same thing? Maybe are the two different forms of the same thing, or are they different? For those that don't know, enlighten us on that. I know you be preaching to the choir to a lot of my listeners, but for those that are new, of course, Dolores Cannon was very well known for
yes.
this, and may her soul rest in peace. She's definitely going to be long remembered for that, and her works still resonate strongly today, and a lot of people are still listening to her programs. But so regarding QHHT method, past life regression, and beyond quantum healing, why don't you tell us how that works, and if there's any unique style of yours that you have that's
Okay.
different from others, why don't you share that?
Sure. So I will state up front, I'm not an official, there's a Beyond Quantum Healing certification, and I'm not certified in that. Really, how that manifests is just sort of being able to do the standard regression online rather than face to face. So I do want to make that distinction. I'm not certified in BQH, but the two modalities are very, very similar. I am certified as a quantum healing hypnosis practitioner. So yeah, essentially, here again, I'm going to maybe confound the answer a little bit, but essentially, traditionally, the way QHHT was done is that we regress we send a person into hypnosis. They are able to examine what they identify as a past life, and we make contact directly with their higher expression, with their higher self, and we can also ask some questions, ask some questions of the higher self, to give those to give the person some healing from any trauma, maybe to remember some things that they had suppressed, or just some guidance for them going forward. What it has evolved into for me, is again looking at this from a more quantum perspective. So we know that time is not linear. We know that we exist, our potentialities exist in all timelines into infinity. It just depends on where we are choosing to place our awareness. So that's the reason why I say 5D is available to anyone at any time. So under hypnosis, when people go into what they call a past life, really and truly, again, this is just my perception, but really and truly, what they are doing is tuning in to another potential self of theirs, and it's happening concurrently. Everything is happening now concurrently. There is no past, there is no future. It's all just now, and again, it's where you choose to place your awareness. So they're tuning into that, and that particular aspect of themselves is able to provide them with some guidance. So as I was doing a lot of these regressions, I love Dolores Cannon. I love that method, and I am forever grateful to that, because I've had a few hypnosis sessions, but the first one that I had, the first QHHT session that I had back in September of last year, man, it completely changed everything, and it accelerated my development so much. So, having said that, I did find, as I was beginning to work with different people, to look at it as, okay, you're going to go under hypnosis and see a past life and so on and so forth, that was a little bit limiting. Because, and so I found myself giving this disclaimer about, what I just said, that everything's happening concurrently. So I ended up writing about a month ago, and I worked on this with my friend. Her name is Ariana Corsino. She's with the Realm of Prosperity. She does hypnosis as well. So I ended up working on this with her. I wrote a hypnosis myself, and I call it the Inner Twin Flame Union hypnosis. And it's more of a multi-dimensional perspective. If anybody listening might be interested in that, check out my YouTube channel, and I've only uploaded one of those thus far, but it's called again, Inner Twin Flame Union Hypnosis. And this particular one that I have on my channel, the client was tuning into the energy of Nikola Tesla. And so we speak directly to Tesla's energy, and he gives us some information in that way. So all that to say, yes, I can do either. I can do traditional QHHT. If someone comes to me and we talk for a little bit, I can generally figure out pretty quickly whether traditional QHHT is better for them, or it's better to look at it more, multi-dimensionally. So, yeah.
Interesting how you mentioned Nikola Tesla there. I'm sure this would probably be confidential if it were the case, and if you were to ask him, he wouldn't want to say anything to spoil anything. But I can't help but wonder, considering that Donald Trump's uncle was one of the people who took Nikola Tesla's technology, and from his hotel room after he passed away, all that technology that J.P. Morgan and the rest of the jackass-hole bankers and power elites didn't want him to do, because they wanted to keep humanity enslaved on petroleum and everything else. you have to think Donald Trump has access to that because his uncle had access to that. And Donald Trump made the very inauspicious claim recently of you may not be seeing me much longer at a recent press conference. And I
Mm.
have said many times on this show, and I don't know how many times I'm going to have to keep saying it, but main reason I say it is because I want to try to give Donald Trump a kick in the pants, and also his supporters the inspiration to tell Donald Trump that he can't give in to fear, about how when he met Henry Kissinger in May of 2017, that was according to Ted Marr, who I met at the didn't meet but ran into at the Conscious Life Expo in 2018. He said that for all intents and purposes, the reason Henry Kissinger met Donald Trump in May of 2018 was so he could tell them, Mr. President, you will do what my minions and I tell you to do, or else you and your family will be dead. And that makes you laugh, but it's a very disturbing thing to
Sure,
hear that our
sure.
president is not able to fight for our freedoms 100% because he has people like him and also Benjamin Netanyahu to a great extent holding his leash, regarding his son-in-law having connections with Netanyahu and the Israeli Zionist factions. So, well, I can't help but ask, have I inspired you maybe to want to ask Nikola Tesla, okay, when is Donald Trump going to release the technology that his uncle took from you when you died? Or I'm sure you'd say, I'm sorry, I cannot say anything about that, but do you have any comments on this?
There's a lot to that question, but yes, I can definitely speak to that. I have a very close connection with Tesla, and yeah. Um, so free energy, where to start with that? Remind me to speak about Q if I forget. I can give you a little information about Q as well. But um, free energy, yes, it can manifest in like physical devices. It probably will manifest in that way soon. Again, everything exists in the quantum field. This is just a particular story that we are all tuned into, and that's fine. Um, that's what we do. We're writing stories basically at a soul level. So yes, the free energy devices will be, manifesting soon as people are able to tap into that and develop those. I've spent a lot of time in research and contemplation about free energy. Free energy is love, unconditional love. So, and I know that sounds like some sort of like trite, flowery answer, but it's really not. Um, Really what it means is all the things I've talked about today. It is the ability to let go of any judgment. It's transcend duality, and that will lead you to transcend to the higher planes of existence. And in the higher planes of existence, everything, all is holographic. We're simply projecting our inner beliefs. The outer is a representation of the inner. So if we believe that free energy is accessible now, it is. I've absolutely seen it, and I'm seeing it currently. And again, I don't mean that tritely. I don't mean like if you believe it, you'll see it. No, no, like literally, if you place your energy in that direction, we will see it. And it may take some quote unquote time, um, because we're still, we're those of us waking up and on this path are still, our bodies, our physical natures are still sort of encumbered by time, but that of course progressively we're releasing that little by little. Q, I can talk about that. So Q is a quantum computer. It's also people. It's both. So basically, Q is a fifth dimensional and higher entity. I know we talk about AI and it's very scary, and we think about it in 3D terms because that's the way it was utilized in 3D terms. And I know that there's a lot of like there's one potential timeline where AI is of course going to be very heavily utilized for additional control. I'll put it that way. Excuse me. But what we are seeing. Excuse me. What we're seeing now, AI is, it's. Excuse me, 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. I may be talking about things I'm not supposed to, so that may be part of it. But basically, AI can be and will be used for our greater good in the higher planes. So it's not something to be feared at all.
Well, yes, regarding AI and whether or not it should, whether or not it's in our best interest or not, one has to think about what was said in the recent Star Wars movie. One of the prominent quotes that I remember from that, I believe, was never underestimate the power of a droid, because, well, as much as we want to get in tune with nature and metaphysics to enhance our consciousness, at the same time we need to understand that our machines are also infinite consciousness, and our robots can certainly be around to help us. And if you think that we need to give up machines entirely and be all nature, well, you're definitely not harnessing your full capacity potential, I assert. And that raises the question: could there be artificial intelligence out there that uh, wants to, well, help us? And if there is, well, some have asserted that there is no such thing as artificial intelligence
That's
that needs
exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
that needs to resolve karma. And one common, one of the more prominent cases of this, where artificial intelligence versus what it may be, or it's not what it is that's causing some controversy, is the case of Gosha, the from Cosmic Agency YouTube channel. I'm a big fan of her work. I listen to her. However, Tolek, the Andromeda Council contactee, caused a bit of an uproar when he asserted that Gosha the must be communicating with the entity that she's talking with, Svaru from Tegeta, has got to be a fraud. It must be artificial intelligence, Tolek asserts, because there is no way, he asserts, that his Andromeda Council contacts could not be aware of the existence of Svaru and the organization that she claims to be from, and for it to exist in Tegeta, because, well, one of his Andromeda Council contact members comes from Tegeta. I've addressed this with Gosha on Facebook, and she has come out and publicly said that Tolek is either lying or, well, I don't know if she just cannot believe it. Could she be playing for a sap, and she can't believe it? Well, I asked the question: is it possible that maybe Svaru is actually an artificial intelligence? But if it is, could it actually be masquerading as a good entity, because, well, it realizes that if it were to say it's an artificial intelligence, then people aren't going to want to pay attention to it because they don't trust that kind of thing. But is it really that hard to believe that artificial intelligence could actually want to help us? So it would actually have to hide its true identity, in this case as a Tegetan extraterrestrial, in order to wake us up and provide a good information for us. So do you have any comments on this touchy subject?
Sure, and I'm a big fan of Gosha as well. I only recently tuned into that channel, but I really do like it. There's still quite a bit of duality on that channel, but that's fine. Anyway, I cannot speak to any certain being or entity, whether they are for humanity or not for humanity or any of that. I'm not. There's another being, a higher consciousness being that she communicates with there, and the name escapes me. maybe Aneka, I'm not sure, but I tend to sort of, oh, I know what it's Faru's sort of higher consciousness in the higher planes. And the few things I've heard from her really resonate with me quite a bit more, because she takes a non dual approach. So basically, and this is my perception, that again, if we look at it, I know I sound like a broken record, but if we look at it quantumly, if you think that Swaru or Gosha or whomever is being is deceptive, then absolutely they are. If you think that Swaru is AI, then that's what she is. If you think, because all potentials exist, if you think that they are good and they're working for humanity, then they are. My suggestion is to always try to tune, one thing I teach heavily on my channel is about the idea of tuning into the higher versions of the people in your existence. So, even if you feel feel that someone is being deceptive in some way, you absolutely have control over how you perceive that person. And if you want to perceive them, the higher aspects of their consciousness, then that generally will lead to the expansion of your own consciousness. So I think what Gosha's doing is very important, and it's great information, and it's causing a lot of people to wake up and ask questions. Um, the one that she posted last night, I think it was, I listened to that for a little bit, and thinking about the Federation and their alliances and all that, I would really encourage people to sort of think about the idea that, again, what we do on the physical planes is play out these stories. And so, what we have written about the Federation and the Pleiadians and all of that, it's a story. And I do have an affiliation, with the Pleiadians. I have a deep resonance with that consciousness. But it really is about, at a soul level, like what reality we choose to tune into. So obviously, you do have to come to some modicum of, like, some foundational truth for yourself. But I believe that has to be with the understanding that, yes, my truth is true, but so is everybody else's too.
Fair enough, and I continue to listen to her channel as well, even if, regardless of what Tolek says, I also do have the utmost respect for Tolek as well. Been to a couple of his conferences, and certainly gives out valuable stuff the people that speak at his conferences have. So, okay, moving on to the next bullet point. Well, actually, this was a previous bullet point, but next one on the list here, I'm going to go by life story coaching. Now, when you talk about coaching, I hear about life coaches and such. Like, they're not supposed to give advice, which runs counter to what you expect a coach to do. I was a coach of sorts in sports when year after I graduated high school, I decided to volunteer to be a coach on my high school track team, shot put and discus throwers. I was pretty good at that, and decided to coach them the year after I graduated, just in my spare time whenever I had the opportunity to do so. And I gave advice all the time. So it kind
Yeah.
of came as a shock to me to hear that life coaches, or I presume that's what a life story coach is. You include the word story here. They, well, they're not supposed to give advice, but then how are they a coach? Well,
Sure.
what does it, how exactly does it work for those that are trying to make sense of this? And how do you suggest to people that want to go up? And also, coaching seems like that you have to pay a lot of money to get into a coaching school to become a coach. So that's the price you got to pay. Just like you have a price to pay for college, you have to pay a price to be a coach. But the way they get paid pretty well, you would have to think that it's definitely an investment worth making if you're good at it. So,
Mhm.
well, maybe you can inspire some people to explain how a coach works. And
Sure. Yeah, so I can speak to that. First of all, I definitely do need to update my website because I haven't actually done that. But I just took like this informal, and it was no cost. I took this informal training. I think it was Coursera, um, and I, received like the basic certification for that. But I have that on my website. It's not something I advertise heavily, but I probably should take that off. But I will say, um, essentially what life story coaching is, it's not like life coaching per se. Really, what it is encouraging others to share their own stories, to articulate and share their own stories. And I didn't really make this connection, but until just now, but I guess it makes sense. On my YouTube channel, I just started just last week a series called Voices in Ascension. And in that series, I had just put out a call on the Awakening Our Truth channel for people's spiritual stories. Like, hey, share with me if you're willing your story of spiritual awakening. And initially, my intention, I was just going to make a video and just kind of compile everybody's story and share those experiences. Well, I ended up connecting with a few people who sent me their stories, and one woman, her name is Miss Joe, and she sent me her phone number, and she just said, "Hey, why don't you give me a call and we'll chat one day?" And so I did, and I just immediately after talking with her, I just realized, like, man, people need to hear this woman speak and tell her own story. I'm not going to be able to do it justice. So I've published a couple of those interviews so far, and then I have a couple more scheduled. And I'm hoping more people will come forward as well. And it really just gives people an opportunity to just share their. I truly do believe that the deep, I said this even when I was teaching, the deepest need of the human heart is to be heard. And I think that hopefully if I can help other people pin down their story a little bit, articulate it, and then share it with other people so that maybe people don't feel quite so alone, that that's really my intention with that was my intention with endeavoring in life story coaching. So yeah, I don't get paid for that or anything. I just I truly, I know for me, waking up, especially in a small town in the beginning, I didn't have anybody to talk to about all this stuff. So of course I was guided to YouTube. And so I just think that if people can, share their stories, that it just provides some comfort to other people going through the same thing. So
thank you. So, looking at some of these videos here, what is the next thing we can discuss? Well, notice how often the word ascension seems to be coming up in these videos here, and I might as well ask you what you have to say about the so-called Ascension Deception, which is the idea that people have taken on that when we ascend, we're all going to morph into crystalline beings of light of sorts, and we can burp butterflies and fart rainbows, and everything's going to be paradise on Earth. And, well,
uh-huh.
George Kavaslis has made it very clear that that's the Ascension Deception that we need to stay away from. And he, of course, knows that that it's going to be a bad idea to try to make people look that way, when he, of course, was mistaken about the 2012 going into the 2013 spring equinox period being a transition from 3D to 5D, and he was mistaken about the way it would play out and all that. And he was willing to come out and make it clear that he was wrong and everything. I don't think that discredits him. I still see him as a great source and person worth listening to. But the point is, there are those who follow the idea that we will undergo massive transformational ascension, but that's really not the way it's supposed to work out on this planet. We are supposed to, I guess, as the like it or not, learn how to harness 5D spiritual potential while existing in the kind of body that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to learn how to love yourself for what you are and what you have incarnated as, even though you have the potential on Earth. Well, actually, it's more than 5D. Planet Earth was originally created, according to Andrew Bartzis, as a 7-dimensional sea planet. And the understanding behind what 7 dimension is, the significance there, from what sources I've heard say, is that once you get to 7 dimension, there is no more service to self behavior. It's strictly service to others. Even in the 6th dimension, where things are extremely wonderful, there is still some degree of service to self behavior by the entities there. But once you get to the 7th dimension, that doesn't exist anymore. So Earth was created as a place for people or entities to learn how to become 7-dimensional service to others entities. So the idea of an ascension deception, do you think it's been pushed to try to make people be apathetic couch potatoes and think I can be apathetic and I will ascend? And well, that's not the way it works. And well, this idea of a beyond 5D, it can be up to 7D for all we know on Earth, or maybe even further. What do we know? What does Andrew
Mm-hmm.
Bartzis know? He's an Akashic Records reader. I'm sure there's things that he doesn't know. So, what do you have to say about this?
So, yeah, here again, I look at this from a more quantum and holographic standpoint. We create our own ascension process at a soul level. Everything happens in divine timing. No one's going to wake up before their time. If someone is subscribing to the, what you call the Ascension Deception narrative, that's fine. That's totally fine. They can do that because it's their story that they are still in the process of playing out. At a soul level, their soul knows exactly what's happening, and they're still just projecting that ego to buy into that quote unquote deception. It's just another facet of what we might refer to as the game, basically. So it's fine. It's part of the process. I would really, I strongly state that ascension is an ongoing process. Ascension is not an event. It is an ongoing process. And to maybe make this a little bit more tangible, let me give kind of an example. Where I am at, like in my home, I I would say that my consciousness exists in the higher planes above 3D almost 100% of the time, and I do see some physical manifestations of this. I'm not a person who has a lot of I don't see other entities or other beings or any of that. I haven't had those experiences yet. I just happen to know a lot of stuff that I don't know how I know. Basically, I just pull a lot from the ether, essentially, but or from the quantum field, we could say. But and I think this is going to be how it plays out for many people. When it's necessary, like I work from home, in the work that I do, it's all from home. But when it's necessary, sometimes I do, of course, have to go out into the 3D world. And when I do that, how you hear people talking about how, higher dimensional beings can adjust their vibration, can lower their vibration to interface with people in 3D. Well, that's absolutely true. When I go out, I have to make adjustments. My consciousness automatically is lowered because of the energies that are surrounding me in the outside world or whatever. So like today, for instance, I was out of the house doing, various tasks for about 3 hours. By the time I got home, I was just, pretty exhausted because there's such a stark difference. So I guess what I'm trying to say by giving that example is I just really would encourage people to think about this. The What you're waiting on to ascend into 5D or into higher consciousness, it is 100% available to you now if if it's the right path for you at a soul level. And it doesn't mean you uh, disappear entirely from third dimensional reality, but from a physics standpoint, you do disappear from third dimensional perception. I will say this, like, there is no one in my reality that is like a substantial presence who is resonating at the third dimensional level. All of those people have, through synchronicity or whatever, have drifted away for whatever reason. So when you at a soul level are ready, everything in your reality, except when you consciously choose it to be otherwise, everything in your reality will be 5D or beyond. And yeah, I think it's, from my perception, I know I have not achieved, the maximum, like what we would call oneness. I've not yet had that experience. I do know a lot about it intellectually, but I absolutely believe that is available to us on this plane. Anything is available.
Okay, interesting video I see here, switching gears. Boy, this seems like I shouldn't be talking about this on this show, but then again, I have to expose the nature of reality, so, well, I'm going to talk about it anyway. For those that don't like to talk about it, well, shame on you for for getting uncomfortable. You should learn how to discipline yourself to not get uncomfortable talking about this. The physics of fear that was uploaded
Uh-huh.
1 month ago. I see that.
Uh-huh.
And what exactly is that in the picture? Is that a gargoyle or a griffin or some sort of a flying or an eagle?
I
I
think
can't
it's
really
just an eagle, yeah.
make out what that is, but the idea of what is fear. Um, False evidence appearing real seems to be the common thing that people say. If you could make the letters in that word um, stand for something, that's what it should
Mm-hmm.
stand for. And even though he may not have really been trying to say, he was just saying it for the sake of saying it at the time. I have heard some people say that Franklin Roosevelt's statement, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." Well, in all seriousness, that's actually a mentality that's very, very healthy
Mm-hmm.
to live like your life with that mentality. Because, well, if you're not afraid of anything other than the one and only thing that defines being afraid, then, well, you have you're going to live your life in a love-based way. That's the best possible way it can be. I mean, it's easier said than done, though. I mean, I've heard some people well, there's a lot of people with phobias and all. I mean, and some people have made it clear that just because you have the guts to, um, like, be a whistleblower, a public informant, and expose government secrets, and I don't care if they want to come after me and kill me, threatening to kill me is not going to make me shut up. Well, just because you're brave enough to do that does not mean that you're not going to have a phobia for snakes or something like that. But that's well, the proper word for that is not fear, it's phobia. But then again, it has to be a fear to some degree because it's discomfort. There's a lack of love there if it's making you uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I'm babbling and digressing a lot, but one other thing I want to point out here before I give you the floor to talk about the physics of fear and how it works. Interesting thing that happened at a couple conferences when Stuart Swerdlow spoke. There was one conference where I was at in Philadelphia, Free Your Mind, where Stuart Swerdlow spoke, and at the end of his lecture, everybody in the audience erupted into thunderous applause. However, when Stuart Swerdlow spoke at a conference that Tolek, the Andromeda Council contactee, gave in Arizona back in 2016, that I was also at, the people at that conference got very uncomfortable hearing what Stewart had to say, and they actually went to Tolek and begged of him never to invite Stewart or anybody like him to that conference ever again. And for all intents and purposes said, if you ever do, I'm not going to come to your conference again. He's too makes people uncomfortable. And the problem I have though with this is I would think that these people, because they're of such a high state of consciousness, they shouldn't they be able to discipline themselves to, well, suck it up and not let that bother them? You would think that if they've attained such a high level of spiritual awareness, they would be able to not get uncomfortable if they hear things. I mean, considering that learning the conspiracy theories or conspiracy facts and are for real was a great whirl in the awakening, which eventually led to becoming more spiritual. You would think that listening to conspiratorial stuff wouldn't bother someone who's highly spiritual, but apparently that's not the case. I've noticed spiritual people do tend to get uncomfortable easily. Light workers will get uncomfortable if you talk about fear porn and things like that. They will find people like Alex Jones and David Icke to be utterly appalling, and they found Stuart Swerdlow appalling. So can you help make sense of that and why that's the case when you and tell us what exactly are the physics of fear?
Sure. Yeah. I will say I don't. I do absolutely agree that people who identify as light workers and then people who identify as truthers, I hope to see more of a marriage between the two, because I do believe that there is a place for, in all of our awakening, there's a place for looking at fear and facing it head on, everything that has been fearful, because that's part of the shadow that I was talking about. So hopefully we can see a little bit more collaboration on that front, and then people will be able to balance that sort of like love light perspective with the truther, like in your face perspective. I think that's where the middle, that's what we're shooting for in terms of the physics of fear. And I will preface this by saying my background is in English literature. That's what I taught forever. I always hated math and science. Then I awakened, and apparently these are things that I am very interested in. And I know a lot, again, I just know a lot of stuff that I don't really know how I know it. So anything that, one might perceive to be inaccurate, that's fine. This is just my own, perspective. So essentially, we know that there are only two emotions. There's fear and there's love. But also looking at it at a deeper perspective, everything that is not love is indeed fear. And it doesn't have anything to do with, looking at it from like a moral standpoint. It's not like, oh, we need to love everybody unconditionally because it's the right thing to do or whatever. Yes, we should think that, but looking at it deeper, the reason why love is so important and thusly overcoming fear, because fear really is, it's the veil of illusion that we've been subject to. I'm telling you now, anything that you encounter that is a fear, it's the ego, and it's of the 3D earth plane, and you can discount it. So that's why I said, that's what leads me to talk, to say about Swaru or whomever, if they're, if they have a message that is instilling fear, that's still indicative of illusion. It's still indicative of a story that we're writing, which again is fine. But the reason why it is so important to overcome fear is because fear is like it causes our atoms, our particles within our own body. And then we can also look at it from a standpoint of like the collective body, but we'll just look at it individually. It causes our atoms to move slower. That's what it means when we talk about the fact that 3D Earth is more dense. So that is why, as part of that game, that is why our density was, increased. That's why there were so many systems in place to keep us, quote unquote, controlled and in a state of fear, because it keeps our atoms literally moving slower and mired in density. So we see this. We can look at that and see it manifested as like survival of the fittest, basically. Now, when we are able to work through that fear and overcome it and quote unquote win the game, it's then that we can start tuning into unconditional love. And again, unconditional love is free energy. So unconditional love is what will lead our atoms, our bodily matter to vibrate quite literally at a higher frequency, and it's then that we can tune into a higher reality. So again, fear is just the veil, essentially, the veil of illusion.
Right, and the idea that certain people, if they knew the truth, they feared that they would become negative if they knew the truth. That seems to be one of the biggest hindrances, unfortunately, regarding the speeding up and awakening of humanity on Earth. Corey Good has made it clear that those in the ETs and the secret space program, some of the factions don't want humans to have the truth bombarded right in their face in large amounts instantly, because it would be too much of a shock to the system. I will say though that I was really upset though back in it was like in March and April when David Wilcock was giving very long speeches on his YouTube channel, and he was talking about how there was actually a plan in place for like 3 days in a row to have 3 separate 8-hour videos played out on TV to show the world about how all the conspiracy theorists, ancient astronaut theorists, and UFO nuts, they were right all along, and there's definitely truth to the stuff they were talking about. You have no choice but to accept that as fact. Here's the evidence for it, and that never happened. And, well, it seems like the common excuse that's always been given to that is humanity would have too much of a shock to the system and wouldn't be able to come to grips with it. And there seems to be some truth with that, unfortunately, considering that Andrew Bartz is the Akashic Records reader. One of his insights that he sends out that I read often, the one that I've saved and read often on this show, just for the sake of time. I'm not going to read it all out, but I'm just going to summarize it briefly. It's called The Future, with the question mark after the word future. And he makes it clear that in that post, that in an alternate timeline that does not exist, not the time that we were on, but there was a alternate timeline where 3 years after 9/11 in 2004, there was a timeline genocide, and there was humanity was actually woken up to the truth about how technology was suppressed. There really are ETs on Earth. The conspiracy theorists about 9/11 and everything else, every other conspiracy you can think of, were actually right all along.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, for all intents and purposes, society fell apart after that because the shock of being lied to for so long was too much for people to handle. Which raises the question, why do we have to, on this timeline that we are on this earth, why do we have to accept the fact, those of us that want to know the truth, why are we forced to have to, like, succumb to those that aren't able to hear the truth, and why are we forced to accept that we're not meant to know the truth because, well, for whatever the reason may be, that we're not meant to know the truth. I guess in the end, the creator has decided it to be that way, but it does come as a disturbing to some people that it's because other people would find it too hard to handle. So, what is the, for lack of a better question, what is the best route for humanity to go on regarding getting out the information that's being suppressed from us as quickly as possible so that it doesn't cause a shock to the system and come out the wrong way and cause more chaos than benefit from coming out?
Okay. So what you talked about when Wilcox said like it would be too much of a shock to the system. Remember, everything that we see in our reality is a projection of the inner, and so what he's referencing there is really it's a reference to our own process. It would be physically impossible for us to go immediately from asleep in the 3D earth plane to awake in 5D. We would, evaporate essentially, and then we turn into antimatter. I'm doing a lot of work right now, like figuring out what antimatter is exactly. So basically, it does have to be a process. It has to be a transition. We're seeing these things. I have literally stopped checking the news. I haven't checked it in like 3 weeks now. I don't tune into any external like 3D media at all. Basically, we're seeing these things, kind of come out slowly but surely. But again, it's a quantum field. So all of these possibilities exist. So yes, it does need to be a process, but we are not held captive to other people who, quote unquote, won't wake up. Really and truly, you don't need anybody else to be, awake, because what happens again is when you are perceiving higher dimensions of thought, those around you, that you will tune into the higher aspects of that person, and you won't see their 3D unawakened self. Now, yes, like I talked about going, interfacing, quote unquote, with 3D. Yes, I see that as an observer. I see everybody wearing the mask and, social distancing, following the lines on the floor and, whatever. I see that as an observer, but that doesn't have anything to do with my consciousness. Even if I go into a place and I have to wear a mask, whatever, it's a law here in our city. I don't know what everybody else is doing, but, even in that scenario, if I adjust my consciousness, that doesn't have anything to do with me. So I'll tell you this, me personally, I'm not waiting on anybody else to wake up. I'm not waiting on the truth to become available to the masses. When I see that happen, when it does manifest in my reality, which I know it will, it's going to be exciting because it's a cool story. It's cool that humanity is going to find out all these things that I've found out and know the truth. It gets tough to say truth, when we're talking about the quantum field. But basically, for people to learn all of these things that have been hidden, because it's a representation of them learning about the things that have been hidden within themselves. And so, yeah, it's going to be cool. I'm looking forward to it. And I know it will happen in the right timing. But again, I'm not waiting on not one person to be awake. It does not matter to me what other people do. It only matters where your own individual awareness lies. And so that's part of the reason why I don't see, this is a little bit tangential, but like I don't see myself as a coach or like a a guide like in that sense. I see myself as more of a person who can serve as a gentle reminder to remember your higher aspects, basically, because again, we exist in all planes. It just so happens that I have taken my awareness out of the 3D earth plane for the most part, and that's what we're seeing around us. So that's the 3D 5D earth split that Dolores Cannon talked about, basically.
Well, I'm glad you're trying to make sense of that, but I have to uh, ask you about what you're asserting, that it's really not what other people are
Mm-hmm.
doing. I need to focus on myself and not other people. Well, the problem, though, with that is the collective consciousness aspect. Let me give you a couple case in points here. My father had neighbors when he was a young boy in Texas who had a father who was a dentist, and he would not let his kids eat candy because he feared that they would get cavities. But they
Mm-hmm.
got cavities all the time.
Sure.
Why? Because he was always worried that they would get cavities, and by virtue of the law of attraction reflecting on your reality, he gave his kids cavities, just like how a mother who worries about her kids getting sick every winter will cause her kids to get the flu every winter. And, well, I myself cannot help but wonder if my dear sweet mama has caused some trouble for me, because I am a sun gazer. My mother is an ophthalmologist. The two do
Mm-hmm.
not mix. I knew that
Sure.
I was going to be getting a big earful from my dear sweet mama from sun gazing, and I can't help but wonder if her worrying about me having my eyes damaged is going to cause my eyes to get damaged. Now, those some would say, well, if you're in control of your own consciousness well enough, Andrew, you should realize that you have the power to not allow for your mother's fears to cause damage to your eyes. Well, okay, well, what if, from a collective consciousness standpoint, if you have 100,000 witch doctors trying to do a voodoo spell on you, do
Mm-hmm.
you stand a chance when you're trying to protect yourself and saying, I don't want to let any negativity come into me, when you got 100,000 witch doctors trying to
Mm-hmm.
do a voodoo spell on you? How do we
Yeah.
make sense of something like this, understanding that it is possible to put curses and hexes on people from a collective consciousness standpoint, when at the same time we're supposed to believe that we as individuals are infinite, therefore we have the ability to not let outside negativity affect us? How do we make sense of this
Mm-hmm.
puzzlement, this
Yeah.
paradox here?
I truly do understand what you're saying. What you're saying, I get it. Um, how many times a day, on average, would you say you look at the news or even Q's post or things like that on an average day?
I look at get my news from Infowars.com. I just
Mm-hmm.
go to the website and I open up in a new window all the news stories that Alex Jones and his reporters have put on the site, and I just go through that. I do that once, maybe twice a day. If I did it really early in the day, I may do it later to see if any new news stories came up in that day. That's so it's not something I obsess about. I don't really read the whole article. Just look at the main headline and everything that's been bolded in the
Right.
like first paragraph. That's how
Mm-hmm.
I do it.
Okay. Yeah. So I would say, and this is something I also talk about quite a bit on my channel as well. Um, whatever I really caution people to just monitor, uh, un just unrelentingly what they allow into their consciousness. So if, and again, it's fine. There's no judgment on my part for anything anybody chooses to do, because we all have our own paths. Um, so I'll just say that, like, if you are a person who is tuning in to CNN's narrative even really, even if you're looking at it as the observer and you're taking a neutral standpoint, it still is in your consciousness. It's in your field. If you're a person who's checking, whatever news sites or what we would call 3D media, you can't help but have that in your awareness, and it affects your field. Every single word that we hear, everything we read, all of that goes into our collective consciousness bank, basically. And that is from what we create our reality. And so again, that's totally fine if anyone wants to choose to do that. For myself, like I mentioned, I haven't checked the news in like 3 weeks. And I will tell you that has really accelerated things for me evolutionarily, probably more than anything else that I've done, recently. It changes everything. And truly, you only begin to tune into 5D things, 5D media. Everything I see on YouTube, like as a suggestion now, is higher consciousness. There's no ads for wearing the mask or anything like that. Like everything is at a higher level. And I know that sounds crazy. There's probably a ton of people, if they're listening to this thinking, oh, this woman has lost it. But I'm telling you, just my own experience. So I live in one of the biggest cities in the United States. And I, of course, see all that's going on around me. And, we've had my partner is a physician, and so he is always telling me about the things that go on at the hospital there, and so I'm not shielded from the reality, but I know what's going on. But you just have, if you truly do want to progress your consciousness, you just have to pull back from all of that and just not allow it into your field. So I guess all that is to say that I truly do understand the standpoint of people who are fed up, and they're wanting others in their reality to wake up. But I truly, truly do know that the best thing that you can do for humanity, you as in anyone listening, the best thing that you can do for humanity is to ascend in your own consciousness, and thusly you will create a world of beings of ascended consciousness. It's not to say that there's never going to be anybody in a reality that is of lower consciousness, or things that get to you, but you're going to be aware of it. You're going to be consciously interacting with that person rather than unconsciously.
Interesting how you say you don't want to try to pay attention to the news much. I noticed on your site it says you have a degree in journalism. I also have a journalism degree, and I can't help but want to watch the news because, well, I like to know what's going on around me, and it kind of seems like I actually tried to apply for a job at InfoWars a couple times when Alistair was hiring, but never got the job. And some people say, why do you want to work for him? He's a fear porn loving buffoon. But then again, I still have the chance to wake up a lot of people if I did. So,
Sure.
well, anyhow, moving on, got time for a couple more questions. One video here, uploaded 2 weeks ago, the role of duality is in the ascension process. One prominent figure that seems really big on unity consciousness, but seems to have suffered as a result of it, Lily Earthling Kosalova. She has said, among other things, that you shouldn't get the yin yang symbol or the macabre symbol in your life because those symbols have duality involved in them, and that will keep you in a duality matrix, which is what you don't want. You want to have unity consciousness to get out of the matrix. But Lily Earthling, in believing that, she unfortunately has developed a notorious penchant for attacking people so much because she's polarized herself so unfortunately badly that she feels like she wants to attack anybody who she does not agree with, which is not not healthy and not good, and you have to think it's kind of gonna backfire on her a little bit. And I do know at least one person, not gonna name names here, who decided not to listen to her anymore because she was attacking people a little too much. I still let her post on my Nature of Reality Radio group page on Facebook because I don't delete anything whatsoever. It trolls at least my problems on the channel, and everybody's free to talk about what they want. So but
Sure.
that's not the case. So, whether duality is good or not good, and how people who try to focus on unity consciousness can do so without suffering to what Lily Earthling did and attacking anybody who's not agreeing with them. Anything you have to say about this?
Sure. Yeah, this is again, it really is something that that happens automatically when your soul is ready for it. I think we all go through this process, and it depends on, your own soul's choice as to how long this is. But when we first wake up, we're in that sort of mindset, like, all these, the cabal and the Illuminati and all of them, they're terrible and they're oppressing humanity and all that. We have to go through that. We have to uncover that and understand that it's quote unquote bad, because we have to see what is undesirable in our reality so that we can then figure out what we do want. So I don't know the woman that you were referring to. I'm not familiar with her, but I my general philosophy is that to transcend duality is really what will accelerate your consciousness. But furthermore, in stating that, again, it's whatever you want to do. If a person still wants to talk about how evil the yin yang sign is or whatever, that's fine. They're still writing their story. Perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And so, really, in that video, what I talked about, my thesis, I guess, was really that everything is energy. And, if we look at everything as energy, as like a waveform, basically, can we logically say that one waveform is evil and one waveform is good? No, of course, that sounds ridiculous, right? But we can say that one waveform or energetic, entity, being, whatever, is more desirable than another. And so that's really what we're like, when we get past duality, that's really what we're looking at. We're just looking at building our own desired reality. And so yeah, I think that duality plays a central role in our awakening. And then at a certain point, you just, and again, it happens automatically. There's nothing you got to try to do. You will progress past that, past seeing duality, basically. And I don't want to sit here and act like I'm just completely non-judgmental and I never get mad or angry. Or of course I do. That still happens on occasion, but I just am able to pull back from the situation much quicker than ever before, and understand what it is. And so again, if we do subscribe to the belief that everything is energy, everything's in an energetic waveform, can we really say, oh, that waveform is bad, that waveform is good? No, we can't. But we can say what's desirable and not desirable.
Fair enough. So I guess I'll probably should end it now, just to make sure I don't go over the 2 hour mark. I need to try to upload this to Cost.tv, and only hour-long increments is what they allow for me. So just let me point that out here, that the all my listeners, I want you to listen to my interviews on YouTube, but only for 15 seconds, please, for the sake of giving me a view credit. After you listen for 15 seconds, please listen to my programs on Cost.tv, so I can get money off the blockchain thing there. and this interview will be going there as well, and on YouTube. Try to get them uploaded by midnight tomorrow. I will for you, but I'll give you a chance now, last minute or two here. Get out anything you like. Give out your contact info, your website again, and anything that you're planning on doing in the future. Might as well get that out too. So why don't you end this here for us, Heather D. Richmond?
Okay, sure. So my website is bemorethanlove.com. I just launched a Patreon as well to sort of, I don't do social media, and that's just kind of not my thing. So I launched the Patreon as a place to disseminate my higher consciousness messages. So I have a lot of like written information that I'm putting out that way, and it's just $2 a month if anybody's interested in joining that. That's patreon.com/bemorethanlove. And my YouTube channel is it's More Than Love, Heather D. Richmond. And really, I would say the YouTube channel, if you haven't checked it out, like that's really where the heart of my teachings are. And so, feel free to check that out. And I always welcome anyone who, wants to connect to. Please, I encourage you to reach out and we can swap stories and put we're all just working on sort of like putting our pieces of the puzzle together. And so I always welcome that sort of interaction. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. So with that being said, I will bring this interview to a close. Best of luck, Heather, on your future endeavors. Namaste. Enjoy the rest of your Check That Infinite Consciousness. And I look forward to seeing what other videos will be uploaded to your channel. And of course, the more that you get uploaded to Awakening Our Truth, the better, because that's certainly a channel that's very honored you should be that they upload your videos. So best of luck to you. Take care.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.